Returning to one of our top stories this hour, rebel fighters in Syria say they've captured the northern city of al-Raqqa. Let's cross to Beirut and speak to Robert Fisk. He's a Middle East correspondent for the Independent newspaper. Robert, very good to see you there. What do you make of this? Just how significant is al-Raqqa, and if the opposition fighters manage to keep hold of it?
Well, if they manage to keep hold of it, and I'm not sure they have all of it at the moment, well, it's another of those little benchmarkers. You know, this is the first provincial capital that they've got total control of, if they have. It's interesting to note that it appears to be an Islamist faction that has captured it, rather than, you know, the Free Syrian Army. And I'm sure that that will be one of the questions that Mr. Kerry is asking all over the Gulf at the moment. You know, who is actually running the war against Bashar al-Assad? And that's a question which is dominating British policy towards Syria, European policy towards Syria. So the Raqqa incident is important for, or capture is important for two reasons. One, that it's probably gone. Two, who actually captured it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, with the visit of the US Secretary of State to the region, the timing is interesting. And we already know that Leon Panetta, the Defense Secretary, supported arming Syrian rebels, only for his advice to be rejected by the White House. Do you think anything's going to change on that front?
No, I don't. I've been told by an Arab source whom I trust completely, a Syrian Arab source, that at a recent meeting with a Syrian delegation, British Prime Minister Cameron said that he'd raised the issue of Syria with Obama in Washington, and that Obama's reply was, "I didn't get re-elected to intervene in Syria. Don't bring this up again." Now, I cannot vouch for this quotation, but I suspect it's correct because my source is good. And that does suggest, doesn't it, that we're not going to see any serious military assistance to the opposition from the West. But whether we can see that coming from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, that's a different question, and I suspect we probably will see military assistance in larger form coming from Qatar.
Exactly, and that's exactly where he is right now. He's right here in Doha in Qatar, allies, but they have very different views, don't they, about how to deal with the situation in Syria?
Well, I think the first thing Mr. Kerry must be asking, particularly of the Emir of Qatar, is what kind of Syria do you want? I mean, the West would love to see a sort of parliamentary democracy. We love democracy, as you know, very much in the West, like we thought we had introduced into Iraq. But Qatar and Saudi Arabia are not exactly advertisements for Arab democracy, are they? And so the question really is, what kind of Syria does the Emir of Qatar, indeed the Crown Prince as well as the King of Saudi Arabia, foresee? Are we going to see the Salafists arriving in Damascus? Or are we going to see nice, secular, Free Syrian Army people taking over? I don't think it's going to be as clear-cut as that. But I don't think the Saudis are intent on seeing parliamentary democracy in Syria. It's interesting that British Foreign Secretary Haig, our beloved Foreign Secretary in England, who made a speech 2 weeks ago in London, he said that Syria was now the centre of world jihadism, which might have been a speech from Bashar al-Assad. Many of us thought that Mali was supposed to be the centre of world jihadism, but it appears to switch to Syria. I have a feeling that we in the West are going to betray the Syrians. I smell a bit of Yalta, you know, where Churchill insisted that Poland must be free after the war, but accepted that Stalin would run it. But
just to expand on that a little bit, to what extent?
Well, you see, it's interesting. So you have to bring several things together. The Israelis have only condemned Bashar al-Assad's regime once in 2 years of bloodshed. So the Israelis actually, deep down, I think, would like to keep Bashar. Given the fact that we know there is this extraordinary groups of Islamists moving into Syria to fight the regime, the West is asking itself, well, do we want the Islamists in Damascus, or maybe some form of the old regime again? In other words, betray the opposition and say, well, maybe if we can't keep Bashar, some kind of secular government like Bashar, or maybe even Ba'athist up to a point. I suspect this is how the brains are clicking on, if they exist, in the Foreign Office and the Foreign Ministry in Paris and the State Department in Washington.
John Kerry billed this as a listening tour. Do you think it worked the other way around for him? Do you think anybody's listened to him?
Given America's behaviour in Iraq, a war they lost, and its behaviour in Afghanistan, a war they are losing, I would think probably not.
All right. Short and sweet there. Robert Fisk, thank you very much indeed.
I try to, Nick. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.